Are you searching for answers? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.
And then I'm sitting there and I look at this Benedictine cross. So it's Jesus on this cross. So I look at this cross and I'm like, where did this come from? And suddenly, like out of nowhere, as if, I'm talking to you now and then I suddenly burst into tears. Like I was normal and then I just cried. My body was like shivering and I had, I was shaking. It was that bad. And I couldn't understand what was happening. And like my nerves, like I could feel them like wavering and my foot was tapping. And suddenly all of the pain of my past just overflowed. My name is Jemille. I'm 24 and I currently study at Notre Dame University. So I'm doing a major in Chaplaincy, which is theology and counselling, which is a bit unique. My mum was the one who really helped us in our faith because she baptised us, went through all the sacraments, we participated in like so many events, and we also were in the church band called OMG, which is like, oh my God, but we got away with it, so it was good. And my dad was not Catholic up until I was about 6 years old, and then he became Catholic because of my mum. And I think one of the things that was always rooted in my heart was that I loved Jesus, but I didn't want to admit it to myself because of all the things that I was struggling with my family. So I really struggled with my dad and my relationship with him, and so that kind of made the family dynamic really hard. There was a lot of, for example, emotional abuse. And so he really struggled, and so that kind of brought the family into many difficult situations, and so that made me feel like, oh, well, why would God care about me? Why does it matter? But in my parish at St. Joseph's in Oatley is tiny. It's like, almost like a little chapel, and it's really, really old. And that's where I went to primary school with my brother and my sister. And I, like every time there was a mass event or some sort of like, be a reader, I was like, yes, I want to do it. And I don't know why, but I always, like, even in art, I drew Mary, I drew Jesus. I would talk to Mary and Jesus. I would talk to myself a lot. I always saw things as it were. So I was bullied a lot. And my mum used to say, oh, they're just jealous of you because, you're trying to live a good life. And that made it really difficult also to connect to God, but seriously, deep down, I always loved him. Like there were these amazing statues in my church, St. Joseph, so he's always been my protector, the Sacred Heart, and the Transfiguration on the back of the church wall. And so there was something about that church that made me really, feel alive in a way and sort of always kept me grounded. But as I got older, year 9 was when I really encountered God in a Lenten group, which was amazing. And it was just me and another girl in a school of 1,000 kids who really loved their faith. But then I went through high school and like year 12, 11 and 12, and 11 and 12 HSC, I just didn't care. I started, watching lots of TV shows illegally, I will admit that, and just completely disconnecting from God and like the experiences that I had in year 9 and from when I was a kid. And the family dynamic was not helping either. So that made it really hard to feel like I was loved and of worth. And I was like the oldest son and the prodigal son. I was always fighting to earn that love that I never received. So I left high school and I was going to be a teacher in Macquarie University doing history teaching, ancient and modern history. And I thought, oh yeah, I could be a teacher. I felt like I had to decide my life from year 9 onwards because you choose your electives and things like that. So from when I was like really young to when I was, a lot had changed. So after year 12, I was like, well, I can find satisfaction and happiness in the world. And so I went looking for it in the world. I went looking for it in my relationships. The minute a boy liked me. And so I filled myself up with anyone and anything in order to be loved. And that included like spam watching Netflix, spam watching shows. I was even into Pokemon trading games, which meant we bought a lot of it and spent a lot of unnecessary money. I was horrible to my parents. In the end, I didn't really even care about them. I just wanted to be far away from my family as possible, but I felt like I was also trapped. So when I entered university, I had just come back from Europe, and that European trip was probably the worst trip I've had so far in my life. So I was excited to start university, so I got into uni. But on the first day, I went to, like the O Week. So I went to the O Week stall, and there were these free thongs, and they had Walk with Jesus on them. And I was like, yeah, so cool, like free thongs. So you had to sign up, and it was a Protestant group. I didn't know that. But so I signed up, and I got 5 pairs for each of my family, which was awesome. They're like, yeah, free thongs, woohoo. So I had all these free thongs, but then I got this call saying, hey, do you want to meet up? From this girl called Pip, and she was from the Baptist church. And I said, oh, I don't know. So I joined her, and she asked me this question: what's your relationship with Jesus? I said, oh yeah, I know him. I'm Catholic, does that matter? And she said, no. And then I said, I said to her, well, yeah, I pray and things like that. But that question actually prompted me to respond. And so she started inviting me to events, and I went. And it was through the Anglicans, the Baptists, and the Protestants that I came back to my faith. Now, the turning point was, my sister was helping out at my Catholic church in the youth group. So I said, okay, I'll help out too. If she's doing it, I'll do it too. I want to be a part of it. I helped out, and then the leader said, I'm leaving. You can have my job. I was like, oh, money. I've never had a job before. So she offered me her job, but she said, you have to go on this formation retreat. It was 1 month. And then a month after that, I was also going on to a Baptist retreat. And before I entered into that, I was going to become a Baptist. I wanted to join the Baptist church. What was a 19-year-old doing who wanted to be Baptist on a Catholic retreat? Money. That's why I wanted to go. I thought, okay, I'll just give up Facebook for a month. This was a month retreat at the Benedict Retreat Centre in Richmond. And I was like, yeah, I'll give up Facebook and everything, and especially to get away from my family in order to have money. And I was very also attached to material things as well. I really struggled with that. I bought so much of so many different things. So it was the relationships and the material things that I got value from and love from as well that filled me up. But really, I was empty. So I'm like, yeah, I'll come to this retreat. So I didn't know anyone. And I turned up the second day. Funny kind of side note, the Arab guys thought that my name, Jemille, which is French Arabic, thought, oh, there's another Lebanese guy coming. When I turned up white and, a girl, they were like, who's this? So I didn't know anyone. And when I entered into this place, the first thing that I noticed was, where did all this prayer come from? I didn't know the Angelus. I didn't know what the rosary was. I had never had a Catholic education throughout primary school and high school, which is sad, where I really learnt about how to pray. And I was like, I didn't know Catholics could pray this much. And I'd already been questioning deep down in the Baptist church, why isn't Mary mentioned? Why isn't there confession? So I had, there were things stirring already. And then it gets worse, right? The leader says, okay, now tonight we're going into the chapel. I was like, okay, let's go into the chapel. And we're going to have adoration. And I'm like, what's that? Another thing I'd never heard of. And the guy was like, okay, adoration is where the host, which is the blessed host, the blessed consecrated host at communion, is put into a gold object it's shaped like a sun called the monstrance. And we adore Jesus longer. And I'm like, what? In front of the piece of bread that I eat? I didn't believe that piece of bread, this tiny wafer, could be Christ. So I'm joining 21 young people that I do not know on the first night in this chapel. And then he goes, when we're sitting down and I'm sitting in front of this piece of bread that's just come out, he says, now we are going to remain silent for an hour. I'm like, what? Silence for 1 hour? I can't even say silent for 5 minutes. And so my thoughts were racing, my feet were tapping, I was looking at my watch every 2 seconds, and I sat at the very back so I could get out the quickest, because I was like, I need to get out of here. But I didn't want to be the only one out of 21 young people who were deeply in prayer, as if they had known Jesus their entire life. And it was like they were having a conversation with God, and they had known him for ages, and I had never wanted to have that conversation. Even though I had already started coming back to God, I still didn't want to talk to him personally. I'm like, no way, I can't talk to a piece of bread. So when the night had finally finished, that 1 hour felt like 4 years. So when I finally got out, I was like, phew, come on, they can't do this again. And I had this false hope, yeah, they won't do it again. It's like a one-off thing. They just want to show us what this sort of prayer is about. And I ended up back in that church every single night for the entire retreat for 1 hour. And even there was a 3-day silent retreat within that retreat time. So I kind of contradicted myself, and knowing God, he has other plans that are so much better than mine. So it was probably on the second day of the second week, it was about Monday or Tuesday actually, we went back in there and I was like, okay, I'm used to this now. I really would have sat at the back, but for some reason I felt drawn to sit nearer to the bread, that I was like, oh, Harry Potter movies, come on, I don't think that this could possibly be Jesus. I still didn't believe it. So I sat a bit closer, but on the side, in the shadows, so no one could see me, and so that I could just get out as quick as possible. I was a typical Catholic, never sit at the front, sit at the back. So I was in the middle, on the side, and I was looking around, I was looking at all these people. I was thinking, wow, they're still, after one whole week, still in deep conversation. And I kind of wanted what they had, just like I had at the stall that time with the Anglicans and the Protestants. I want what they have. But it was something different to the Protestants, because this was deeper and more intimate prayer. Anyway, I just kind of cast it aside. And then I looked around and I looked at my watch and I was like, can't wait to get out of here. Can't wait till this retreat's over. 2 more weeks, woohoo. And I was thinking about everything else. That was the worst part. Everything that I didn't want to think about, all the pain of my past, just kept coming up. Stolen money from my parents, the times that I had used people, used the boyfriends that I had, my addiction, everything, the way that I've been treated by my dad, and even my mum too, had just all came overflowing, and I couldn't stop it. The walls that I tried to build up crumbled. There was no stopping that flow. And then as I looked at Christ and he looked at me, it was like I was Mary at the foot of the cross. And as I was looking up to Christ and the wounds on his side, the wounds on his hands, I could feel them. I could feel everything. I could feel the pain. And these words came into my head. I thirst. I thirst. And I was so distraught in that one moment that I thought, I need to give him something, but I had nothing to give. And then I thought, okay, what if I cut my hands? I had an image of me cupping my hands and my bitter tears falling, and I was offering him my bitter tears. It was the only thing that I had, and he drank it. And I was feeling just so overwhelmed, and I looked around, tried to, clean myself up, because what felt like 5 years of life coming out of me was just 2 minutes in the church. And I was meeting the crucified Christ. It was so powerful. And I knew in that moment that Christ was dying for me. That was one thing that stood out to me. And as I was, cleaning myself up and blubbering my nose, someone broke the silence, and the leader said, confession's available. And I'm like, nah, no way. I am not going into that confession. It was me and God, And I was seriously sitting him down and saying, I'm not going in there. That priest is going to judge me. He's going to make me say 3 Hail Marys and then be gone. He's not going to care. That was the impression that I had. The impression that the host was fake, just a piece of bread. Like, why are we worshiping a piece of bread? And then this confessional that just, a man in a box. And I was like, no, I'm not going in there. But I tried to hold on to what I wanted to do. But somehow, you can't beat perfect love. And God just pulled me. It's like he pulled my heart out of my chest and took me into that confessional. And he sat me down. And so I had my heart in my hands and I had no words. Like when you get really nervous about something, like your palms sweat and your heart is beating in your chest, in your mouth. Like, I was so nervous. But for some reason, I had all the words. And I even confessed my addiction. And I waited. The suspense killed me. It felt like another 5 years of my life. The suspense killed me. I was waiting, as if I was in court and the judge was going to go, guilty, go to hell, or guilty, like you don't matter. But the words that this Fijian priest, Father Apelli, said to me fulfilled me in an instant. And no other person who had ever said that to me, like these words, ever fulfilled me as it did in this one moment. And he goes, in his Fijian accent, Jemille, I'm probably doing it really bad. You are loved. You are loved. And I think everything just shattered. And I was filled. And I was not thirsty. And I was so full of joy because I knew that it wasn't the priest. I knew that Christ was in persona Christi, in the person of Christ. The priest was not there, Christ was. And he was the risen Christ. So I'd met both the crucified Christ and the risen Christ in one moment. And I felt like the prodigal son coming home. That, when you go to the confessional, it's like a bath. And so you wash everything clean because you're so dirty. But also when the prodigal son came home, like the minute that the prodigal son came over the hill, the father saw him and he took him into the house and gave him a party. Like God chucked a party for me in that confessional. It was incredible. And I went out of that confessional and I saw the Blessed Sacrament and I knew that that was Christ. And I knew that he was real and I knew that I was loved. Like there was no other person that mattered in that moment except me and him. And I was just filled with so much joy. I used to be really shy and not like I'm speaking to you now. And Christ just burst out from me and I've never turned back. I mean, my journey just started there. But from that moment, nothing had sustained me or fulfilled me until Christ did in that one moment through those 3 words, you are loved. And I was so full of life. It's like I'd gone, like the deer he yearns for running waters, so I long for you, O Lord, in the Psalms. I was the deer and I was drinking from the springs of life. And I finally understood what that meant. Not to say that at the end of that, my whole life changed, but I changed degrees. I started studying theology. My family didn't change necessarily, only I did. But that was the main difference. I never got out of my relationship straight away. I've had a real struggle with that. And I'm only now healing from my addiction, which was pornography. And my addiction to pornography was the one thing that really destroyed my heart because I gave it to so many different things and so many different people. Yeah, and I think that's the story that I really want to share, that Christ is real. And without him, we are nothing. And I think it's adoration as well that has become the center of my life as well. If I don't have adoration, if I don't listen, and if I don't talk to God like a friend, then I begin to go backwards. And the relationship kind of becomes distant and dry. It's like, you have a married couple, the two of them need to communicate. And so communication is essential. And I realized that it's not a discipline, but it's an open, loving, friendship and relationship that God wants from me. So Jesus is my Savior. He saved me that day from myself and because my heart was open. And I just love him so much. He's just increased my love, and he increases it every day. And it opens your eyes to seeing Christ in not just myself, but in other people. Yeah, and like he's making me realize my call. My call is to holiness. I think that's also one of the main things that came out of my conversion, was that I am called to be a saint. And I really want to get there. And my goal is heaven. And I'm just on this journey with God, and he is leading me home, just like the shepherd to the sheep.
A lot of talk in our church today about the new evangelisation, and we might ask, well, what's new about the new evangelisation? One thing that's new is that we're trying to renew the faith in people who should already be Catholic, should already be Christian. Individuals, families, communities, whole cultures that need to rediscover the gospel. And so what's new is that they're getting a new shot in the arm of faith, of evangelisation. Another thing that's new about it is the way that we do that. And the new media and groups like Shalom World TV are very important for bringing the gospel anew to our cultures, to our families, to each of us individually. And so I encourage all the viewers of Shalom World TV, and I encourage Shalom World TV themselves to keep up the good work, to keep watching this channel and to keep up the good work of presenting the Catholic faith to our world today.